Hello, and I'd like to start this audio documentary thing by informing you guys that there may be some swearing and there may be some racial terms I might be using to describe stuff, but I don't mean it. It's a way to express myself, and I'd like you guys to know that before I begin my little segment. This segment is actually, a literacy narrative, and I'm kind of new to this, so please forgive my pauses and everything. It's kind of late at night, so let's just get this show on the road. My name is Joy, and I'd like to say, or to start. I'll start just by saying that I was born in Okinawa, Japan, and I didn't stay there very long. I was only there for 2 years, which isn't very, long for someone to remember, like, anything at all. But I was born there. It was on military soil, so, you know. But after I was 2 years old, we moved to Ponape, and that's like some little island in the Pacific Ocean. Not very known place for you guys to know. But I lived there for 3 years of my life, and I had one of my first encounters of people being very racial and mean about how my mother spoke. You see, my mother is Filipino, and she speaks Tagalog. It's her native tongue, and she isn't that great at English. Nor am I, but English is my only language, so I kinda have to be good at it, somewhat, maybe. But, continuing. The first, experience with racial stuff dealt with my mother, and it was because, of me. I had what you call little puppy love stuff, the little kid, oh, huggy, kissies, all those cute stuff you hang out with little boys and stuff. But, that's how it really was. That's all it really was. But his parents didn't like my family. They didn't like my mother because she was darker, she looked different, they just didn't like her and stuff. And because they didn't like her, they didn't like me. So what they did was, when we were going into grade school, they talked with my parents and asking where I was going. They transferred him to a different school, so I never saw him ever again. Which is kind of sad, because he was a really nice person, even though I was 3 and I don't have full memories of all that incident. But that was one of the first things that happened with me when I was really young. The second incident with me was when I went to California. It was a long, let's see, I was 6 or so. Yes, 6. I was at least 6 years old. And I started developing, some of my mother's accent, her language, even though I didn't fully understand it, especially when I got to California. See, we went there for a vacation because my brother was being born. Hallelujah. Not really, but he was being born, and my mother wanted to be in America when she's giving birth to him, not in the Philippines, because they did something wrong in the medical procedure, and she didn't trust him ever again. But my brother was born in May 6th. Yes, May 6th. And shortly after, I say a month or 2 after, I broke my arm. Stupidity. I really don't wish to explain, but I suppose I shall, because it's very interesting how I broke my arm out of stupidity. I jumped off a dresser, and I was stupid because it was my cousin's game. You should never trust cousins with really bad games. Don't ever do that. But I broke my arm, and I didn't really get too much, racial stuff heading towards me because of how I look. People don't know what or who or what I technically am, though that's really a bad way of saying it. No one really knew if I was Asian. I look American, but they don't know what I am. So they never really, not too much on myself, but they did a lot. They were very nice to my grandmother or my mother. They had a thick accent, and we went to the hospital after I broke my arm. And, well, they're like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" And they looked at my grandmother and my mother really weirdly. And I don't recall what I said, but my mother said what I said to them was, "I couldn't fly." And, well, that was the end of that story. They just left me alone and got me all patched up at 12 a.m. at night. And then I started attending school for like 4 months in Cali, which was not the best experience in my life because everyone looked at me like I had two heads and that I was like some goblin or troll living under their bridge in their neighborhood. Not a good feeling. But it's like there's not much you can say about that. Like, I started talking and some kids would snicker at me, and I never really noticed it until I really hit Malone, where I live now. When I got into, well, middle school, it really hit hard because I never knew something was wrong with my voice. Well, everyone assumes there's something wrong, but as Miss Lee has said, my voice is perfectly fine. My language is alright. It is our dialect, and we put it together in English-ish. I think I just totally, like, spliced that completely up. I'm sorry. Continuing. I've always had speech lessons in classes and stuff because of how I spoke. And I never realized there was anything wrong with it until middle school, as I said, when everybody started poking fun of how I spoke, and that teacher said that I needed to go to, well, my speech therapist more often, and I didn't like speech therapy. It was horrible. It was awful. Oh my god, I never liked it, but I loved the woman. She was very nice, but it was just not, it's not something you really want to go to and have people poke fun at you about. And yeah. High school was worse. People were like poking fun of how I spoke still. I fixed my language. I fixed my THs. As you can probably tell, you hear the duh and the duh. Fuck, I just messed that up. But basically, you hear the D when I'm trying to say THs when it's actually supposed to be the and there and all this and that. I put in some of my words. Give me some credit on that. But like, I can't say much about it. It's like I didn't see anything wrong. I don't think there is anything wrong with how I spoke. I pretty much blocked what everyone ever said to me about my tongue, how I speak. My mother, well, she toughened up ever since like some incident in like Price Chopper about how she spoke. She got really mad. She's a very scary woman when she gets mad. But it's like people think you're supposed to talk one way, and I mean, I've had a bunch of teachers that come up to me and say you're not speaking correctly. I mean, my guidance counselor in like FA basically said, "Joy, I really think you should go to speech therapy." But I've already been to speech therapy, and I had to explain to him that I am speaking how I wish to speak. But he says it's very informal and you should never speak like that at all. And, well, what can you say? It's just, that's the way they think. And I wish people would, learn that it's not really wrong to speak like what your tongue is or stuff like that, but teachers don't really understand, and people really are racial about it, and I don't like it at all. And I hope this has been a great example for how I speak, and a little bit of how I feel, and a little bit of my past, and a little bit of everything. You know, I just kind of threw everything into this, I suppose. Anyways, I shall end this, and I hope this was good for you, and that you enjoyed it. If you did, have a good day.